Welcome to the City of Seattle's MLK Unity Day Celebration, January 16th, 2023. Throughout the program, the Race and Social Justice Initiative, RSJI, and Seattle Office for Civil Rights invite you to contemplate this question: how can the City of Seattle honor the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as we recover from the pandemic? Today's program will include remarks from Mayor Bruce Harrell, Councilmember Tammy Morales, and Seattle Office for Civil Rights Interim Director Derrick Smith. Musical gifts from Ms. Josephine Howell, and illuminating reflections from the youth of Young Women Empowered, Why We.
My name is Indigo. I'm 16. I'm Black and I was born in Atlanta, and my mother was born in the Midwest and my father was born in Texas. One thing that I think a gift of COVID brought was kind of having to wake up to a lot of injustice in our world, specifically around institutions that aren't great for people of color, specifically African Americans. And I think that just knowing that a lot of Black people have that gift of resiliency really empowered me, and I felt very uplifted during that time. Having to live in a world where people have kind of forgotten about that resiliency, specifically non-people of color, and still living with the threats that were in COVID, but non-people of color not taking that seriously has been really challenging. My ask for Seattle is for them to be more open to non-police centered legislation, and possibly funding more money from the police into things like education and affordable housing.
Songstress Josephine Howell offers healing and inspiration recorded from a Seattle studio stage. Dressed in an elegant ivory outfit and gold-trimmed head wrap, she sings in front of a black backdrop, expressing love and compassion with every note and every gesture. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. It was grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining eyes
God's praise. That when we first begun.
My name is Athena. I'm 19 years old and I use she, they pronouns. I'm Vietnamese and I have lived in Seattle for my entire life. So the pandemic was the most mentally low and isolated and lonely I've ever been, like as long as I've been alive. Because before that I had been doing all kinds of things, seeing my friends every day, seeing my mentors every day. I was very involved with climate activism. I've been involved since I was in 4th grade. And so in January of 2020, I took a break. I was like, this isn't working, so I need to do something bigger and do something better. And I was feeling like 2020 was gonna be the year, something big was gonna happen, and then the pandemic hit and everything shut down. And so I went from having all this stimulation and seeing all these people to just being like completely inside with my 2 family members and Zoom. So, eventually, I was regularly in therapy, had been before, but eventually my therapy sessions started phasing out because our schedules got extremely busy. And eventually we just stopped seeing each other and my mental health went down. And, but even then, like, even without that access to therapy, because I couldn't get into more therapy because of how hard things were, but even then, like my friends who hadn't been on therapy before that were doing even worse. We would have conversations where they would tell me about their struggles and I would be like, you should talk to an adult, you should talk to a therapist. They would be like, well, I can't get on therapy because I'm like on all these waiting lists and I just can't get in. There just wasn't access, or only so many therapy places take Medicaid, that sort of thing. So my ask for the city is that there be more widespread access to therapy and mental health resources, especially for young queer people, disadvantaged folks in lower income communities, and specifically people of color.
Derrick Wheeler Smith is a tall black man with broad shoulders and a commanding presence. He is wearing round tortoiseshell glasses and a maroon sweater with a long-sleeve gray jacket with buttons. He is standing in a long hallway in Seattle City Hall with wooden shelves lining the wall on his right and metal walls on his left.
Hello, my name is Derrick Wheeler Smith, and I am the Interim Director for the Seattle Office for Civil Rights. I am the grandson of Leon and Ruby Flowers by way of Transylvania, Louisiana. I am the grandson of Arthur and Irville Wheeler by way of Mineola, Texas. I am the son of Doug Wheeler and Barbara Smith, a native son to the Seattle area. I am the husband of Stephanie and the dad of Judah, Jaden, and Jael. I'm not self-made. I'm actually ancestor-made, I'm family-made, I'm land-made, I'm Yahweh-made, I'm community-made. And I'm super delighted to be sharing space with each of you for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. This is a wonderful opportunity really to pause and celebrate the powerful work that many are leading and the impact felt across our beloved city. Undoing the legacy of racism in the most real, tangible, and practical way is equity and social justice work. Our engagements ultimately seek to awaken, individualize, reveal, heal, and then inspire folks to act differently. We should celebrate that we are undertaking the most transformative, liberatory work for ourselves and the citizens we're called to serve. And I think that deserves us just taking a moment to snap it up. I want to take a few moments to share with you some of my learnings over the past few years. Firstly, we recognize the trauma and stress that we as a society have endured because of COVID-19. We've had the collapse of our social structure and the crippling of the economy. And any time that America has a proverbial cold, the ghettos and barrios of America contract pneumonia. And as we continue to do the work of recovery and restoration, it's so important that we continue to grapple with our country's oldest pandemic, COVID-19. You see, we're actually living in the imagination that some folks had over 400 years ago. This idea and notion of othering via racial and gender superiority was imagined and then imagined into a structure. And today we are in an imagination battle, one that demands that we create space for radical imagination and enlist leaders who will dare to dream. We live in this abundant world, but we've been told it's scarce. And given these stories of scarcity, we're left to believe that we must fight each other for resources, which couldn't be further from the truth. Scarcity says there isn't enough, so all we see is need. All we see is problems, deficiency, and lack. And this is what sparks competition for survival and creates the conditions for violence. We need the kind of leadership that dares the staff to dream, to see what's possible, and as a result begins to produce the kind of positive, thoughtful, effective, productive, imaginative, vulnerable-centric, interdependent, community-minded leaders engaged in systems transformation. Secondly, I've learned that we have to be focused on building systems and structures of belonging that increase agency for the persecuted and prevented groups in our city. How do we recognize our interdependence across sectors and across domains? We can't solve complex issues in isolation. And effective solutions to solving for these complex challenges can only happen when we come together collectively to develop comprehensive strategies. We have to move away from fighting each other. This has to be about our collective humanity in a system that dehumanizes us. I've found that we do some of the most awful dismissals and disposals of one another. And I think we're skipping the step of decolonizing and unlearning. So we've decided to punish anybody who missteps. And that's become the new activism. Our knee-jerk call-outs as a conflict resolution tool where we have instant consequences with no process is transactional and avoidance of the real work. And in the end, we only become a reflection of the toxicity we long to heal. Fact, guilt, shame, they're simply not tools of healing and restoration. We need practices that are magnetic. Tony K. Bambara said we have to make the revolution irresistible. And I don't think we arrive there by becoming a reflection of the toxicity that we long to heal. We arrive there through cultivating belonging, which is the ability to see the humanity in those that are not like us. I don't have to be having your experience to acknowledge that you're having an experience. And so it's destroying the myth of us versus them, which is such a key to creating a beloved community. You know, this idea that we can create within ourselves, our movements and our work, a deeper sense of connection, forcing us to lean into new possibilities. We have an opportunity to redefine this notion and idea of who we, the people, are. We have an opportunity to widen the circle of human concern. The last thing I've learned is that it's impossible really to serve people I believe that you don't love. And I feel like the last few years, this has been such a revelatory thing for me. And so how do we then marry love and power? I believe is essential to our success, because power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Love implementing the demands of justice is true power, and power correcting everything that stands against love is justice. This is what widens the circle of human concern and builds beloved community. And it's in that spirit that I would like to invite you to listen as we introduce Seattle City Council member Tammy Morales and the Mayor of Seattle, Bruce Harrell, who have both continued to dedicate throughout their careers, pushing forward what is possible in our great city. Thank you for joining us today as we celebrate and remember the legacy of the greatest American hero, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
Hi, my name's Jory. I'm 17, I'm white, and I grew up in Hawaii and Missouri. In January 2020, I was admitted for a long-term inpatient stay. I turned 15 and I did online school. I was completely blocked from the outside world. I was discharged and I was excited to see the new world. Once COVID started, I was back to the same isolation, but none of the same support. My family was living below the poverty line, and I only had a few options for outpatient support. And over the past 2 years, I was hospitalized 3 times. COVID has caused a mental health crisis. Teens and kids are losing a sense of belonging, and there's a lack of mental health support. There's an overflow of need for inpatient, but not enough beds, staff, therapists to help adolescents. If you ask a teen who's been hospitalized, you'll hear a story of someone who was sent home after days in the ER because there just wasn't enough room. My ask for Seattle is to focus on helping and supporting mental health staff and spreading awareness on how to get the help you need.
Councilmember Morales is a Mexican-American woman with brown skin, shoulder-length dark brown wavy hair, and wise brown eyes. She delivers her remarks from the council chambers at City Hall, dressed in a black button-down blazer and yellow blouse. Rows of black leather and brown wooden seating can be seen in the background of the large room.
Hi neighbors, I'm Tammy Morales. I represent the CID and South Seattle on the Seattle City Council. Thank you so much for inviting me to the MLK Junior Unity Day and the RSJI Summit. This summit is an important reminder of the work we must strive to do every day to create the beloved community that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. sought. The principles of RSJI, undoing racism, analyzing power, learning from our history and others, are similar to the principles that guide my office. As the Seattle City Council member representing the city's most diverse district, I'm guided by the principles of repairing the harm done by the city to our Black and Brown communities by democratizing access to power and resources and planning for the seventh generation. The RSJI initiative is crucial to the work of the city. If we can create a culture of racial equity in our city departments, we can use that racial equity lens to do all of our city work to best serve Seattleites. I really appreciate the theme of this year's summit, centering racial equity in a pandemic recovery. In 1967, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King described how communities of color are, and I quote, perishing on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity, end quote. Over 50 years later, Black and Brown communities around our city are still fighting for the same opportunities and access to care as their white counterparts. During the past 3 years, many of our communities have seen and experienced the catastrophic effects of COVID. Whether it was losing income or housing, or having inadequate access to health care, there isn't a single aspect of our daily lives that was not impacted by the pandemic. My first year in office was 2020. Every year since, I've heard from hundreds of constituents in my district about the toll that this pandemic has taken on their lives. Families who were living paycheck to paycheck and didn't have the space to social distance when one person in the house got sick. Frontline workers who had to keep showing up despite their risk for exposure to COVID. And I heard from many small business owners desperate to keep their employees on staff, but who couldn't pay them when there were no customers. And many of these entrepreneurs don't speak English and had a hard time accessing emergency resources. As we work to recover from this pandemic, we must remember that communities of color suffered first. They suffered worse, and they will suffer the longest unless we take every step necessary to ensure that they're not left out of the recovery models. Two priorities for me are building community wealth and ensuring community wellness. The first example I have is the comprehensive plan update. As we move into discussions about our comprehensive plan, we should prioritize using a racial equity lens in determining our growth strategy. Research has concluded that the urban village growth strategy that we've been using since the 90s has led to massive displacement of Black and Brown people in this city. Let's ditch it. There are better ways to shape our neighborhoods that can increase Black home ownership and ensure that everyone can afford to stay in their community. Another example is to invest in place-based community wellness. This means increasing infrastructure, sidewalks, parks, and allowing for a mix of essential goods and services in every neighborhood. Communities of color, our Black and Brown neighborhoods in North Seattle, in South Seattle, and West Seattle have suffered long enough from being under-resourced. Using a racial equity lens, we can increase community wellness by providing safe, healthy places for people to live, work, pray, and play. That's how we build a beloved community. That's how we ensure that a recovery brings prosperity that is shared by everyone. The Race and Social Justice Initiative challenges us as public servants to redefine the kind of city we want to be, the type of future we want to build for our children, and the kind of communities we want to create for our elders to be safe. For me, the answer is a just and equitable future, and that takes each and every one of you. That's why I've been working on an ordinance that would codify our race and social justice program so that it's not just an initiative, but actual city policy. I want to thank you for your work. I know it's not easy. I know it can be emotionally exhausting, and I want you to know that it is so important. So take time to take care of yourselves and one another. Step away when you need to. And please know that our city will be better for the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sammy, and I am 17 years old. I'm Chinese American, and I'm from Manhattan, New York. The one word that would describe my experience during the pandemic was adaptation. Moving across the country from Virginia was really difficult, but I've gained a lot of new experiences, and through that I found a community that supports me. I've also gained insight into the world around me, as well as finding my passion in healthcare and research. My vision of a thriving city is a place where it's clean, healthy, safe, and equitable. Through my experience volunteering at the hospital, I've seen patients not being able to fully recover due to insurance issues. My ask for the city is universal healthcare for everyone.
City of Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell.
Hi, this is Mayor Bruce Harrell, and I'm standing in a conference room in front of the city's corporate seal and the flag of the state of Washington and a flag of the United States of America. First, happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and thank you so much for joining this thoughtful discussion as we reflect on the teachings and legacy of one of our nation's greatest leaders, the namesake of the county we call home, and recommit ourselves to his vision of justice, opportunity, progress, and fairness for all. When I entered office 1 year ago, I challenged our city employees and our entire city to embrace the concept of One Seattle. One Seattle is a belief that we can do more when we work together, that by aligning our shared values, our common goals, we can inspire the best in one another and achieve the change we want to see. It is a vision for a city that embraces our diversity as a strength and rejects hatred and fear and distrust in all of its forms. This belief has been embedded across everything we've done over the last year, and I believe our city staff has set the example for our residents by showing resilience and a commitment to moving forward in a new direction. We in city government must continue to do the work to operationalize equity, to play big ball, not small ball, by removing barriers to opportunity and driving tangible improvement in lives. I believe so strongly in Dr. King's empowering words that all labor that uplifts humanity has dignity and importance and should be undertaken with painstaking excellence. So as public servants, we must be in the business of uplifting our humanity, of leading with love and compassion. We must do it with purpose and a standard of excellence. The Race and Social Justice Initiative is a cause I've championed for years, and it's my highest priority to help each resident reach their greatest potential as we realize Dr. King's dream for an inclusive and welcoming city. Now, we know that the COVID-19 pandemic exposed and exacerbated many inequities that were present in our society. And as we think about our pandemic recovery as a city, we need to look at how we can center equity across everything that we do to build a city where everyone has the tools to succeed and thrive. Whether that means access to a good job or education, support for their business, or city services and resources, we must be laser focused on how we put equity into practice, not just on the paper. This past year, the City of Seattle has made great strides to expand the programs and services that are driving equitable outcomes for our communities and residents. We came together with labor advocates to pass historic legislation to improve equity in the cannabis industry so that communities of color that were harmed by the war on drugs can access new opportunities. We announced an expansion of the city's award-winning preschool program to increase access to early learning opportunities for Seattle families to ensure every child is on a path towards a prosperous future. We appointed our first members to the newly formed Indigenous Advisory Council to strengthen the city's relationship with our tribal and urban Native communities and to rebuild trust and ensure their voices are heard. Our fight against the climate crisis is focused on building community resilience to extreme events like heat and smoke in neighborhoods most impacted. We as a city received the global recognition at the C40 Summit for this work of building a community-led climate movement with our Green New Deal, and I was very pleased to accept that on behalf of everyone in this room. These are all amazing accomplishments, but we know that there's still more action we can take to advance opportunity in our city and to reduce the barriers to access and to help residents reach their full potential. We cannot slow down in our efforts to put equity at the heart of everything we do. Instead, we must go further. In 2022, I gave the first ever Equity Action Award to the PPATCH program supervisor, Kenya Freedy. Now, Kenya's worked tirelessly to dismantle institutional racism and provide access to community gardening for BIPOC communities across the city. And she is a beacon of what we're trying to achieve with our One Seattle vision, putting equity into action. We know that Dr. King's work is not complete. We must keep striving and working towards his dream of a just and inclusive society. That's why the work that you all do with the Race and Social Justice Initiative is so vitally important as we continue to build a city that we all are proud to call home. The issues in front of us are not easy. They can be burdensome and taxing. In the words of Dr. King himself, change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle. So I say thank you to each one of you for your willingness to dive into this hard work and have the difficult but necessary conversation to keep advancing equity in our city. Together, we are building One Seattle.
Hi, my name is Soria Moore. I am 13 years old and I use she, her pronouns, and I am Asian, Black, and white. COVID was a hard time for all of us, not being able to see our family and friends, technological problems, and constant boredom. My ask for the city is to host more community events so we can engage with others.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as a rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with the steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. For we have come over a way that the tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out of the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the bright gleams of our bright stars is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far on our way, Thou who hast by Thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray, lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met Thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of this world, we forget Thee. Shadow beneath Thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. So let us march on till victory is won.
Thank you for tuning in today for this 2023 MLK Unity Day Celebration. You are invited to continue contemplating how can the city of Seattle honor the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as we recover from the pandemic. Please join us as community on March 23rd and 24th at the RSJI Summit, where we will come together to further dialogue on how our work can move ideas into action. Thank you, Seattle. Peace.